Hey everyone, we've got another episode of the Phantom Podcast. As you guys know, my name is Nabil Ahmed, and we're building the next marketplace connecting chefs, mixologists, and venues to people who want to curate private experiences. But we started this podcast because we want to highlight the amazing people in this industry, the operators, the entrepreneurs, the visionaries. And today we are blessed to have the presence of Chef Eros, the chef of love, or, you know, you let me know what a good introduction or the good tagline is.
You're
But
on the
before I
right
ruin
path.
it,
You're
let's
on the
kick it
right
off the
path.
chef. Good. Let's kick it off this chef. And why don't you give us a quick introduction? Actually, not quick at all. I think we need to go into the
Okay.
details of your journey
Okay.
to understand where you've
Okay.
been and where you're going because it's beautiful. Like you're an
Indeed.
amazing person, but I don't want to ruin it for people. So, why don't you kick it off?
I
Let
mean,
us
if you
know
want
who
to go
you
into
are,
detail,
what
this
you're doing.
podcast might last a whole day. But I would give you the long and short version, sort of like a nice middle burst in like 5 minutes or so. So my name is Tolulokpe Erogbogbo. Tolulokpe means glory, glory be to God. Erogbogbo means everybody. So when you put the two together, it kind of means everybody's glory be to God, right? Growing up, I was born in Nigeria. I'm Nigerian. I was born in Benin City, which is where I'm partly from. My dad is a Lagosian from Lagos, which a lot of people know Lagos in Nigeria. And my mom is from Edo State, Benin City, and Calabar, which is somewhere around the south region. Um, my name as a chef, Chef Eros, comes from a combination of my last name and my middle name. My middle name is Erunse, and my last name is Erubobo. And Eros became not just my chef name, but also like a family name as well. So my family is also known as the Eros family. I always say that Eros is the god of love, but my love is food. I got into food at a really young age, to be honest. I grew up around food with a big family that spent a lot of time around the dining table. The dining table culture was huge in my family. You know, we would sit around the dining table every single day, you know, and on Sundays, it was a huge family affair where we would also have other families join us. And growing up and going into school, my first encounter with food was at the age of 13 when I started a small business with my mom. My mom has always, until date, been my business partner. So I started a small business at 13 where I was selling cheese balls, which is like a little snack, right? I was selling that to my tuck shop lady in school, and she would in turn sell it to students. And I made a little bit of money from that as well, and that sort of just got me into that whole entrepreneurial spirit. And I always looked for opportunities to make a little buck on the side whilst I enjoyed the process. More so, I really just enjoyed the process of building a business and convincing people to buy a product or buy a service. You know, I went to university at a really young age of 15, going on 16, to study international business management at the University of Wolverhampton. And whilst I was in school, I had a side business called ChickenGuy. And what my business was doing at the time was literally just marinating chicken and selling them to students. A lot of my customers were, you know, Indians and other like nationals, but very few Nigerians, to be honest, because I found like a lot of the Nigerians wanted to just eat my chicken and not pay for it. Yeah, so I stopped marketing it to them because they just look at you as your friend. You know, you're in school. Hey, I'm coming over to your house. We're
Yeah.
gonna eat some chicken and some jollof rice, right? But I was able to use that business to sort of save up, and I also did a lot of work in around food. I worked in sales, worked in real estate, worked in alternative energy with Eon Energy, and also worked in restaurants. My first job was actually as a bartender, and it's funny, I got into becoming a bartender because I wanted to impress girls. I had a friend of mine, Alex, who used to get a lot of female attention, And I studied him a little bit and realized that he was getting a lot of that attention because he was always making cocktails and like all the girls were hanging around the bar in the house, and so I wanted to learn, and he wouldn't teach me. He's like, go get a job and learn, so I went, I got a job, and I got a job with Oceana in Wolverhampton, and I worked as a bartender, but right behind the bar was the kitchen, and I found myself always spending time in the kitchen, and I got kicked into working in the kitchen. And then I did a lot of other things around, sales work. I sold perfumes on the streets in London, just did a lot of different things to find what my passion was, what I love to do, what exactly it is that I wanted to do in business. At the time, I thought I was always going to be in real estate. I love the idea of like converting spaces, and my cousin at the time was doing this thing where him and his dad would buy a house and then they will renovate the house and then they'll sell it. And I really enjoyed that like whole process. So I thought I was going to be, involved in real estate, but I guess God had a different plan for me, right? I was finishing up my degree in Wolverhampton, studying business, and I wrote a business plan that did very well. And my mom wanted me to write a business plan for her. She's always wanted to run a restaurant or open a restaurant, so I started working on that business plan whilst I was in school, and I was coming up to the end of my education, and I went home for Christmas holiday, which we all do, always go back home for like a nice Christmas holiday. And I used that as an opportunity to sort of get that business going, so went back home and started like helping her find a place, figure out what we needed to set up the place, the staffing, all the equipment, all of that. And I got so involved that I actually didn't go back to school. So, technically I dropped out of uni, even though I was pretty much done, right? I just didn't actually graduate, right? Because I got
Yeah.
so involved in the
Mhm.
business, and my degree didn't matter to me anymore. It was more so what I wanted to do with my life. So I went on to help her set up the restaurant. We ended up getting involved in an already existing space. So there was a cafe in Lagos in Ikoyi called La Saison, with an owner that was also had a cake business and wanted to focus more on the cake business and less on the cafe and restaurant. So we went in, invested into that and took over the restaurant, and La Saison became our first restaurant project. I was barely 21 at the time, and I turned 21 in the first year of owning that restaurant, and it was till date probably the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. I remember looking back and
Yeah.
thinking to myself, "What the hell are you doing?" All my friends were
Mhm.
having fun, going out, and I just didn't have any time to do any of that because you know how a restaurant is extremely, extremely demanding. But I was building a network. I was building a following of people. People were coming to the restaurant. It was one of the only Nigerian owned restaurants. And at the time, I wasn't a chef, right? I was just an entrepreneur who had a bunch of chefs in the kitchen, and I started working with them to create. I cooked, right? I cooked really well. It was like some people can act, some people can sing. I can cook, right? It's always been an innate gift that I had,
Mhm.
And so I was working with the chefs to create menus and the experiences in the restaurant. And then 2 years into running the restaurant, I was done. I couldn't take it anymore. We weren't making as much money as I had hoped we would make, and it just felt like I was literally waking up to go to work and coming back at the end of the day and not having any results. My account wasn't getting any better, and so I sort of quit. I said I was done with this, so we decided to
Mhm.
sell the restaurant. Walked away from that project, and I thought
How's
I'm going back to alternative energy and real estate. So myself and my brother-in-law set up a business,
Mhm.
and we got an apartment in 1004, which is like a huge apartment building in Lagos, in Victoria Island. And we set up a real estate office while we were doing research in alternative energy, looking at like solar system, gas turbines, and things like that. Um, and barely a year into setting up this real estate company, Nigeria went through like a recession, and this fuel subsidy was taken away. And then there was a strike. Everyone took to the streets, and there was a strike called Occupy Nigeria. And everyone was told to stay at home, and I was one of those people who sort of just stayed at home. I came out a few times, but then everyone was sort of locked up at home, and I was living in an apartment building with a lot of other people, and everyone was kind of hanging out, and I wanted to utilize my time wisely. Just before that, I had started having this series of dreams where I was dreaming about cookies. And I think it was more so craving cookies. I remember going to, when I was in school, I used to love eating Millie's cookies, and I'll buy them from the train station as I get back from
Mhm.
class. And it was like my addiction. But it'd been almost 2.5, 3 years, and I hadn't had any Millie's cookies, and so I was always dreaming about these cookies. My mom said to me one day, "You've been talking
Yeah.
about these cookies that you've been dreaming about. How about you just make the damn cookies, right?" So me and my girlfriend at the time went into the supermarket. We picked up a bunch of things required for making the cookies. She was a chocolatier, so she understood like pastries and baking and things, and I didn't. Like I was more focused on cuisine, and I didn't like
Mhm.
recipes or anything that had to box me in. And so I started doing research on how to make cookies, the different types of cookies, and figured out the type of cookies I wanted were drop cookies, which is what I was buying from Millie's. And so I did my first batch of cookies. I remember making those cookies on a tray, and all the cookies stuck together because I didn't space them out properly. Right, not thinking that the cookies were going to like melt, and then the dough was going to melt and it was going to form, like, spread out a bit. And so when it
Yeah.
spread out, it became one like big tray of cookies. And I took that tray,
You,
like a cookie sheet,
you had a
literally. So I
cookie
took that
sheet.
tray downstairs as like a sample.
Yeah.
It still tasted great, right? Very sweet. I took it downstairs, and in my building, there was a guy called Dr. Sid, who's a musician, right? And he was signed with Maven Record, which is one of the biggest like entertainment record labels in Nigeria. And I took the cookies to the apartment. I remember them trying out these cookies and saying, "Hey, these cookies are amazing. We want more." And so I went back upstairs and made another batch of cookies. And this time around, I spaced it out nicely, and they came out great. Took it back down. I was like, "Yes, this is what we're talking about. We want more." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to keep baking cookies if no one's paying for the cookies." And I remember my friend Sadna at the time said
Yeah.
to me, "Okay, so how much are you going to sell the cookies for?" And I just blurted out 500 naira. And he immediately put his hand in his pocket and gave me 1,500 naira and said, "Can I get three cookies?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, here you go, three cookies,
There you
1,500 naira." I took
go.
money from everyone, and I took that money and I went back to the supermarket and I just bought more products, right? Forgetting about like myself or anything, I just wanted to be able to scale up. And that's what I did for about a month,
Yeah.
literally selling the cookies, taking all the money, going back and buying more products to be able to scale up. And then it was coming up to Valentine's. So
Mhm.
this was all happening in January of 2012. And then by Valentine's of 2012,
Yeah.
my girlfriend was like, "Oh, we should do a thing, like a Valentine's package, get people to buy the products." And bear in mind, in the 3 week to 1 month period of testing out these cookies, I'd started making all sorts of different flavors, right? So I had like bubble gum, I had like midnight coffee, I had like cinnamon brown sugar, I had so many other new
Sounds
flavors
so
that I
good.
wanted to put out. And I was using BlackBerry Messenger at the time as my sort of platform. Now everyone's on Instagram, but then Instagram wasn't a thing, right? It was Facebook and BlackBerry Messenger. But I was using BlackBerry Messenger because I had a huge. Remember that I had a restaurant. I had a lot of people who had built relationships with, and so I
Yeah.
had them on my phone. And when I would update my status of cookies going into the oven, cookies coming out the oven, I would get people send me messages saying, "Hey, I want some cookies. I want some cookies." And then I put out this sale for Valentine's, and I remember selling about 500,000 naira. 500,000 naira worth of cookies, which is about 1 million naira worth of cookies, which is, let me see what that is in dollars now. About $1,000 worth of cookies, right? In one day. And I thought to myself, this is
Mhm.
a business opportunity,
Wow.
and so I created a brand, named it CookieJar, did the logo myself, and started pushing the product, right? And it was doing very well.
Yeah.
The celebrities like Don Jazzy, who owned the record label, would come, and he came one day. He put out $100 for just a box of cookies, and I was getting I was getting traction and I got really excited and I started to put it out more, and one thing led to another. We
Yeah.
started to get more inquiries. And I also started to get bored of just making cookies. So I started making cookie related products because I was trying to stay true to, the name Cookie Jar.
Hmm.
And so I started cookie pops, cup cookies, and then I started the cookie cakes,
Yeah.
layers of
There we
cookies. So
go.
like a big sheet of cookie, and then I wanted to layer those cookie cakes, and then I tried out the first batch of cookie cakes and it was way too sweet. And I remember at this time I had to hire somebody to help me in the kitchen, a baker, a pastry chef. And he joined me and he was like, "Oh, I can make cakes." So I said, "Okay, go ahead and make me a chocolate cake." And he made a cake and I was like, "Okay, cake is great, but I have a discerning palate, right? And I know what a great cake tastes like. I might not know how to make it, but I know what it tastes like, right? So we need to figure out how we can get this cake you made to what I want." So I started doing research and I realized, I looked at different recipes. It's like, okay, you used cocoa powder mostly to get your chocolate. Now we're actually going to use melted chocolate and we're going to incorporate more milk and make this nice and moist and we did our first batch and it was great. But it kind of sunk in the middle just a little. But the thing is, I'd already received an order for that cake, right? And I didn't have time to go back and make a new batch. So I had to figure out how to use my slightly sunk in cake and make it work. So I figured that I could fill the
Yeah.
middle with a little bit of cream, and then I topped it with a layer of my cookie, and then dripped it with chocolate ganache, and it became a thing. Literally, like the customer called me right back and was like, "This is the best cake I've ever had. You know, I want
That
more."
that that that
Exactly.
sounds
And I remember like
gorgeous.
at this time the
Yeah.
cakes were beginning to go out the bakery. Every day I was getting like 10 to 15 cakes going out and it was becoming like crazy. So I was like, you know what? I need to move this thing out. And so I got a location in Lekki on the main road, to put up a store. And I was setting up the store, but I was still working out of my apartment, right? And a very similar apartment to where I am right now in Los Angeles. I lived upstairs. I had my bakery downstairs. And I remember receiving a letter from the association of the building saying, it literally looked like this, like a red letter saying, "Cease and desist." Basically, I have to stop whatever I'm doing with immediate effect. And I was still in the process of setting up the space in Lekki. I obviously panicked when I met with a few people and got an opportunity to, someone was like, "Oh, I have this big space underneath my property. You can come take it. You don't have to pay the rent right now. When you're ready to pay the rent, you can move in." And that's how we got our first factory where we were producing all our cakes and cookies and all of that. And we
Wow.
got featured in CNN. Forbes wrote an article about us. But right after I had started Cookie Jar, I was looking at the numbers and realizing that I also wanted more, right? And so I wanted to do more. And people kept asking me, "Oh, like I remember you used to cook. Do you still do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, I can still make stuff." And I remember getting a job to cater an event for Cambridge alumni, and I did canapes, right? It was just like little bites and stuff. But I'm very visually
Hmm.
like visuals are very important to me, so everything looked amazing, and also tasted great, and I got references from there, and I just kept doing more and more catering jobs on the side whilst I had my bakery going on. And I got to a point where I wanted to structure my catering business, so I created a business out of that. And then I started to like gain even more customers, and one of my customers, the Adenuga family, started to really support me, right? And like book me for Christmas parties, birthday parties, things like that. And my catering business was gaining a lot of traction. And because of that, other people in that sort of like people like that caliber of people started to book me as well. And he's a billionaire, so a lot of his billionaire friends also started to book me. And so I found that my catering business
Yeah.
was now catering mostly to billionaires. And a friend of mine, Chidi, started calling me the billionaire baker, right? And then Forbes wrote this article and titled it "The Man Who Knows What Billionaires Eat for Lunch." Right after that, a few other blogs came out and wrote something similar, also tagging me as the billionaire baker and the billionaire chef. right? And at this time, I started training as a chef as well, training myself as a chef. I had a few chefs, working with them, studying online. I wanted to go to culinary school, but I couldn't afford it, and I also didn't have the time because I had two businesses that I was running at the time, and there was no way I could step back from those businesses for 2 years or a whole year to go on any course, right? But I'll travel abroad and I'll take like a 1 day, 3 day, 1 week like crash course in one thing or the other, right? And
Yeah.
uh,
You took it in a very very
exactly.
entrepreneurial route, right? So like, yeah, the one thing I do love about everything you've talked about is I'm a big believer in hacking the system versus being
Exactly.
told how to build it, right? Because the world is always changing and evolving. And you looked at every opportunity you went through and said, okay, what do I want to do?
Mhm.
And am I good at it? Right. And it's allowed to change, it's allowed to
Correct.
evolve, it's allowed to move forward. And what I saw with everything you've done is you drove
Yeah.
straight
Yeah.
into fear, in my opinion, right? Like there's a scary opportunity.
Mhm.
Are you going to take it or are
Yeah.
you going to hide? You're like, I'm going to take it in every single situation. So that's why I'm only interrupting this conversation because I want everybody who's listening to understand, okay, what would you do if
Yeah.
you were in your shoes? I'll tell you this, there were so many forks in the
Mhm.
road for people to turn back.
Yeah.
Every single one you said yes to. So
Yeah.
that's just my
Yeah.
commentary on this one. And everything, even when you got a cease and desist order, it allowed you to grow your
Correct.
business
Correct.
bigger instead of shut
Literally.
it down,
And
right? That's
so,
beautiful.
as a matter of fact, there were different things that happened during my career that also propelled it, right? So, every single disappointment
Mhm,
ended up being a blessing, right? So, I remember at a point, I
yeah,
had a store on Admiralty Way. I had a production factory in Lekki as well. And I also had a store in a mall called The Palms, right? And at the mall, I was paying
mhm,
in dollars, right? And it was fine because we were generating the revenue until there was a further recession, and what was 150 naira to a dollar went to 350 naira to a dollar, right? And there was only so much I could
mhm,
increase my price
yep,
by, right? And so I had to shut down my store, right? And in the process of shutting down my store, right? And I was still living in 1004 at the time. I had to also move out of my apartment because I had put so much money into this store and I didn't have any money anymore. And so I had to move out of my apartment and
mhm,
moving with a friend of mine, right? So I started sort of squatting in my friend's apartment, right? I literally had a room in my friend's
yeah,
apartment and that was me, right? And during this one, it lasted about 9 months. I spent a lot of time trying to structure my business to get to a point where it didn't have a key man risk as much anymore. Because trying to bring anyone into the business, the
yeah,
first thing anyone would ask is, how would this business survive without Eros, right? Um, and in the
mhm,
1 year period, I started to work on my own personal brand as well and save up to get a new place. So in 9 months, I saved up enough and I got a new place of my own, but I knew that I needed a space where I could host people. And so that became my first test kitchen. So I got an apartment, a 3 bedroom apartment. I was the
yeah,
only one living there, and it had a big living room and a dining area. And I converted the dining area into the living room, and I turned the big living room into the dining room. And so I put a long dining table there, and
mhm,
I started to host private dinners, right? And I'll bring people over every week to come and experience my cuisine. And at this time, I'd figured out what I wanted to do, right? I had done a bunch of different things from cooking French cuisine to doing Italian to doing Asian, and every time that I was tasked, and again, like you said, I'm one of those. I'm one of those people that you give me sort of like a task or what would be considered a risk, right? And I will take it and figure it out, right? I would have already taken it before I think about the fact
yeah,
that, oh wait, I don't know how to do this, all right? And for me, it's like that's part of the process. It's figuring it out, right? And figuring out my identity within it. So even though, because I don't know how to do something and I have to learn, I'm also going to learn my own way, right? And so I have my own voice. And it's so much so that I think now I keep hearing people say that when they see my food or taste my food, they know it's mine, just because my identity is
yeah,
always present, with everything that I've done, right? And it's also because of the organic way in which I've approached my career. So I remember getting a place, doing private dinners, and at this time, people started talking about how, like, if you're not a billionaire and you're having a big event, you can't have Eros's food, right? And so I wanted to create an avenue for people to be able
Yeah.
to experience my cuisine without necessarily having to spend a million naira, right? And so the desire to
Hmm.
open another restaurant started, right? And so I started to do these tasting dinners and getting people involved and knowing, okay, so I want to do a restaurant. What do you guys think? And people obviously started voting more for the restaurant. And I started having people even like donating to raise money for the restaurant, you know. And I eventually raised enough money to start off the restaurant. And I started the restaurant very humbly as a small dining space because really what I wanted was to consolidate. I had moved, I had my catering business running out of my home, and I had my bakery running out of the single factory that was left now, right? But I was separated
Hmm.
from both of them, and I wanted both of them. And I was separated from one of them at every time. If I'm at the bakery, the catering is losing my attention. If I'm at the catering arm, the bakery is losing my attention. So I wanted to bring both of them into one space. And so we got a space in Lekki and put everything under one house. And we said, okay, we're going to open a small restaurant in front. And I didn't want to call it a restaurant. I was calling it a dining room because it was literally supposed to just be a few tables, that can
Yeah.
house 12 to 20 people. Anyway, we put up the restaurant, called it Eros, which means the house of Eros, right? And it literally looks like a house, and the model was to make it look like a house of a well-traveled Nigerian family that is passionate about food, art, and music. So all of those essence were in there.
Yeah.
The look of the space was very artistic. There's art everywhere on the walls. Even like graffiti on the walls. And the music was curated, and the food itself was authentic Nigerian, or rather, I keep saying was is authentic Nigerian with a modern twist. The restaurant is
Yeah.
still very much open right now in Lagos, and I have a good team that's running it, and I've been able to step away from that. As I opened the restaurant, I was also dating someone else who was living in London, and we're traveling a lot, and traveling a lot experiences. She's a huge foodie, and so this was now my first real experience of fine dining. Right. Whilst I was creating fine dining experiences, I had never really experienced it myself. Only what I was seeing on shows like Chef's Table, and like doing a little bit of research, did I really experience it. But just before I opened my restaurant, I went on a trip. Right. We went to Ibiza, we went to Madrid, we went to Paris and London, and had a few fine dining experiences. And I came back with this feel to open my restaurant. And I opened my restaurant, and it was
Hmm.
by a long mile the best restaurant in the country when it came to, the quality of the cuisine, the presentation of the food, and the excellence of the service. Right. And so we kept pushing with
Hmm.
that. And I kept traveling and experiencing more, fine dining experiences and bringing them back into my restaurant. But then there was this yearning to travel and keep traveling and keep going away, and but then I felt like every time I stepped away from my restaurant, it would lose like the essence of who we are, what we are, because I'm not there. And I remember I came in 2009 to LA. I had a big dinner in the hills. 30, 40 people came for this dinner. It was a great experience. A lot of people giving feedback saying we need your food here. And I also wanted to, bring my food here. But my question was, how was I going to do that with a restaurant in Lagos? And I didn't want to shut down the restaurant in Lagos because I put so much in. So I went back in 2019 with the idea that I was going to go home to structure my business. And then I was going to return and be able to travel around, to export my cuisine. Because at this time, my goal had become to put West African and Nigerian cuisine on the global culinary food map. Right. So went home,
Yeah.
started working on structuring, and then you know what happened? COVID. In 2020, COVID
Yeah.
hit. And COVID was a blessing in disguise. What it did was it gave me the opportunity to be able to focus on structuring my business so that I can be able to step away from my business and it would still run effectively. So over the 1.5 years that we
Mhm.
went through the pandemic up until I think the end of 2000, and I did a test trip at the end of 2022 when we opened up the borders briefly. I went to Dubai,
Yeah.
and I stepped away for a while, watched my restaurant run, took notes of what the issues were, came back and worked on it some more, right? And then they closed down the borders again, second wave hit or whatever, third wave, whatever, and I spent more time working on structuring my business. At this time, we had gone from just being, we had a bakery, we had a catering business, or rather, we have a bakery, we have a catering business, we have a restaurant, and we now also have a delivery service. But during the pandemic, we
Oh,
also
nice.
created a service called Fresh Prep by Eros. And what that was really helping people cook easily at home, right? I was also one of those people who was struggling
Yeah.
with chopping onions, chopping garlic, peeling ginger, because I work in a kitchen with 15 other chefs and I don't need to do any of that. I'm standing at the pass and literally instructing people to do things.
Yeah.
And now I'm at home having to chop onions and I'm like, I can't do this. How do we do it in the restaurant? The restaurant has prep
Yeah.
cooks who have done all of that. And so we're thinking, okay, how do we make this a product that people can have at home? And so we created Fresh Prep as a bridge between the gap of shopping and cooking. So you have to go to 10 different supermarkets to get everything you want. And then when you come home, you have to clean the proteins, marinate them, you have to chop the vegetables, blend them, do this. So what
Yep.
we did with Fresh Prep was we created specific products. We did a lot of purees. So pureed garlic, pureed onions, pureed ginger. We did marinades, we did marinated proteins, marinated chicken, lamb, beef. And then we also did oils and spices, and all those products were products that we started to sell online. And then when the pandemic got lifted, that sort of dropped a little. But what it did was it helped my business internally structure. So now the biggest customer for my business for
Hmm.
Fresh Prep is actually my restaurant. So my restaurant is now buying
Yeah.
off Fresh
There you
Prep
go.
and is able to turn out like the service faster, right? But then
Yeah.
it was coming up to the summer of last year and of 2021, and I remember opening my passport and looking at my American visa and realizing that my visa expires on the 18th of June. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I need to renew my visa. Tried to renew the visa, and I heard that the waiting list was 2.5 years, 3 years long before you could get a renewal on the visa.
Yeah.
And then I was blessed to get a job in Abuja to cater an event where the ambassador for the United States to Nigeria was present. And so I spoke to her chief of staff, and the advice I got was that my visa was only an entry into the country and not my stay. That when you get into the country, you will get stamped an I-91 that will tell you how long you can stay in the country for. So the advice was to leave before my visa expired. So I packed my bags and 1 week created a little like holiday tour that I was going to go to 3 different cities, do dinners in those 3 different cities, figure out which city was best for my cuisine and for my move, and so that when I go back home, I can finish up whatever structuring I need to, and then figure out where I want to like export my cuisine to next, right? Anyway, I left on the 12th of June, arrived on the 13th of June, got stamped a 6 month stay in America, right, which was expiring on the 12th of December,
Yeah.
right? And then I started my holiday trip, traveling around different cities. It was supposed to only be 3 different cities. It was supposed to be New York, Houston, and LA. I ended up doing 7 different cities and
Hmm.
doing 13 different dinners, all fully booked, all sold out.
Wow.
But it wasn't a revenue generator. It was more so like building a network, figuring out, what is required to set up a business here, understanding all the different, aspects of being in America and all of that. At the
Yeah.
end of my last dinner in New York,
And it's
I fell into depression. I was depressed because I felt like everything that I was doing had come to an end. And it was time to go back and continue being a
yeah.
local champion, right? I'm quite famous in Nigeria,
Hmm.
but not a lot of people knew me here. So there was this, there's always this like desire to do things where no one knows you, right? To build a name for yourself, right? And from the moment I got in here, people had already started telling me There's no point going back home. Stay here. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? Like, I need my business. I can't leave my business behind. And I remember as soon as that dinner was done and I fell into depression, I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm depressed. Like, thinking about coming back home is making me feel really depressed. And she's like, come back home for what? Like, why are you coming back home? I've got things under control here. You've been
Yeah.
away for 3 months already. Everything's running fine. You don't need to rush back. I think you should stay back and see how you can maybe get a new visa that can allow you to be able to work and come back and forth. And so I spoke to a lawyer. The lawyer looked at my case and said, hey, you're actually an O1 candidate, and an O1 visa is given to quote unquote, and this is what it says, aliens of extraordinary abilities. I
Yeah.
don't know who came up with that.
Mhm.
But when I heard it, I was like, what are you guys talking about? And I researched, and it's actually a real thing. There's actually a visa
Yeah.
called the O1 visa given to
Mhm.
aliens of extraordinary abilities. And that just really means someone who is, prominent in their trade, who is, who has extraordinary abilities and is bringing something different to the table. But track back to how I became an alien of extraordinary abilities is, this name, the Billionaire Chef, had been going around for a while, and I had requested verification on Instagram. And at the time when I requested, my name was Chef
Mhm.
Eros on Instagram, and Instagram kept coming back with different reasons why I
Yeah.
couldn't get verified. You know, and just before I got on a flight one day, just before the pandemic in February of 2020, um, I switched off my phone. But before I switched off my phone, I changed my name on Instagram from Chef Eros to the Billionaire Chef. And I was like, I'm gonna speak into existence, right? I got off my flight and my name had
Yes.
my
Yeah.
my, my Instagram had been verified. So for me, it was like, okay, so
Wow.
the Billionaire Chef is definitely something that is, verifiable. And for me, it's speaking into existence and making what I want to be a reality, and so I pursued that and continued pushing that agenda. And right after started applying for the visa. We applied for the visa in just the first week of December was when we put all the documents together and submitted it. 1 week after that, I got an RFE asking for more information. We decided to take a break during the holidays.
Mhm.
And since I have 3 months to put in the RFE, in January, we put in the RFE. And 1 week after that, I got my visa, which is a 3-year long work visa that allows me to, work as a Nigerian chef, and right after that got the visa, got a space, and moved into my own space in Hollywood. Bear in mind that for the 7 months that I was in America, I was literally sleeping on a couch in my cousin's house. It's one of those like
Yeah.
convertible like chair bed things that I padded off with like mattress pad, duvet,
It's like
basically
a
like padded
futon,
it up. It's
basically.
here right now, and for me it's a
Yeah.
reminder of my struggles and what I had to go through to get to where I am today. And now I'm proud to say that we have a
Mhm.
beautiful space in Hollywood that is a concept kitchen, and I call it a concept kitchen because it's the idea of a professional kitchen in a sort of residential space. So this is like a live work space, and what I'm able to
Mhm.
do is create my culinary experiences. And so the name of the space is called Ile, which means home in Yoruba. And our focus and our aim here is to bring Africans and African enthusiasts together, to make them more culturally aware using food as a medium of communication. And so we're sharing, cultural experiences. Our first menu, called Chasing Drums, tells the story of, 6 West African cultures that have a huge drum tradition. And we're basically focusing on the cuisines in those cultures and using that to bring everyone to the dining table while we discuss that culture. And so that's really what we're doing right
Yeah.
now. And we're 2 weeks in, and the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Chef, I would say you are an amazing person. I love the story that you've told because when you really look at this, right? Yeah, I'm in Silicon Valley, I'm in LA, I'm in Silicon Valley, I just go back and forth. You look at everything you've done. You use technology to bring people together. You've dropped, hey, I've got cookies, who wants them? And you text people through BlackBerry. You went on Instagram, leveraged that platform to kind of push things out. You're literally running all these businesses that are forming, right? Airbnb experiences, like you've got DoorDash, you've got Blue Apron, where they're delivering kind of prep for people to cook. So your mindset is you're a futurist, right? You understand what you need to do. You take the steps needed to get to the next level, and then you pursue it,
Mhm.
and then you level up and you level up. And so, I didn't talk much during this, and I know we're basically out of time, but I'm glad I didn't, because your
Thank you.
story is amazing, right? Through the journeys that you've gone through. So, just to kind of cut this up and close this out, how can my audience members find you? I want them to message you. I want them to follow you. I want them to ideally buy a ticket to one of your experiences. Let
Well,
everybody
the
know how
first
we can
thing
get a
is
hold of
to
you.
stay up to date with me on Instagram. At the moment, Instagram is currently the only platform that you can find me at the Billionaire Chef on Instagram. It's the
Mhm,
Billionaire, like a billionaire and a millionaire, the Billionaire Chef on Instagram. We're currently building out our YouTube, TikTok, all of those. So we're working on all those contents at the moment. But I wanted to do it right, right? So you can find me on Instagram at the Billionaire Chef. That's me
mhm.
personally. But you can also find this space on Instagram. It's at Ile is Home, and Ile is spelled ILE, and it's Ile is Home, ILEISHOME. Ile is Home, and all you have to do is request an invitation. Really, you go on Ile is Home, you send us a DM, or you email dine at Ile is Home to get a request an invitation, and you should be able to get an invitation. We're currently setting up a reservation platform right now. I think it's Talk or whatever, or something like that. And very soon,
Mhm.
people of the general public should be able to make reservations. But for now, it's by invitation and referral only. So if you want an invitation, all you need to do is request one, and we'll gladly send you an invitation. There are two sittings. There's a 5 o'clock sitting, which is a 3 to 4 course prefix menu, and then there is a 7 o'clock seating, which is a 7 to 9 course, multi course dining experience where there's storytelling involved, there's music curated, and a lot of other like little experiences that's added in to sort of beef up that experience. Outside of that, we're working on a few other things like a Saturday brunch, Saturday brunch club. We're working on a few products that we'll make available at certain farmers markets, and really you just stay up to date with me on Instagram. Send me a DM if you want to talk to me directly, or request an invitation at Ile is Home, and we'll gladly host you. We're located in Hollywood, in California. And it's a beautiful space. It's a chef's table, so it's literally a 10-seater dining table,
Mhm.
and we host this private experiences every Thursday. But we're opening up to do more days as things sort of level up.
I love it. All right. Thank you, Chef. I do appreciate the time. And I can't wait to officially myself, when I'm back
Yes,
down
yes,
south,
yes,
try it
yes.
myself. And I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see you everywhere. You're booming already. You're already done amazing things.
Thank you,
Sky is the limit.
thank you,
And I
thank you.
truly believe that with you. So I can't wait to
Thank
see
you.
you grow,
Thank you so
continue.
much. Thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Chef.
inviting me on this. And I look forward to working with you guys on creating, unforgettable culinary experiences.